Hello and welcome. My name is Jaden Blocker, but you may know me here as Arranging the Pieces. And I have done an interview with local musician Carlos Velez, who just recently released his new album, Songbook, under his stage name of Scurvy Rickets. So we really got deep into his creative process and what this music really means to him and the story he hopes to tell with it. So if you're interested in checking out the stories of an independent artist who's really doing some amazing things, stick around and listen to the rest of this interview. And I'll have, of course, links down in the description to all of his work and where you can find out more about him and his music and everything. But yeah, let's just get straight into it. Hello, Carlos.
Hey, Jaden.
We'll be talking about your new album, Songbook, that just came out about a month ago.
Yeah.
I've personally been really enjoying it a lot the past month, listening to it a ton, and
Thanks, man.
it's fun to kind of see a bit of the process throughout, like while you've been making this and sharing some demos and stuff with me throughout that time. And
it's been cool having you kind of listening in on the different versions of it over the years now. I've been kind of putting demos out on YouTube. So I really appreciate you being an early listener on that stuff.
Yeah, it's been really nice to kind of see this whole journey throughout. I mean, not only through these songs themselves, but through all the Scurvy Rickets stuff you've done so far before, and just the growth that's occurred just over a few years with all that. Yeah.
So I'm curious from your point of view, when some of these songs first showed up on YouTube, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, do you hear those and you're like, ugh, man, that sounds rough?
Yes, yeah, sometimes. Some of those early ones, even now, still sound pretty good and stuff. But yeah, they've definitely come a long way from then, and comparing some of the newer stuff to older stuff. I still enjoy a lot of your older things, but kind of seeing how much you're especially with music production and everything, it's just kind of your skills have gotten a lot better with that, and kind of seeing all that.
Thanks. that's been a whole journey with it. I started working on music at home mostly with a keyboard, and that's a pretty easy way to start because you don't have to record anything. It's just, you're recording, but it's it's all electronic, so there's no microphones involved, and you're using pre-made virtual instruments that are already recorded well. So there's not as much engineering work to do from a EQing and compression and all these all this mixing technical stuff. It needs to be done, but it's not as critical to the process as it is when you're recording, acoustic guitars and vocals and electric guitars and all of this stuff. It becomes so much more crucial to know what you're doing. You can't fake it as much as you can with a digital instrument, so that's been a real journey these past few years, is just going through version after version of each of these songs, applying new stuff I've learned and trying to make stuff sound better and not always succeeding, and just learning how to use the softwares and stuff. Recording as a whole, you kind of have to be a recording engineer as a musician these days. The home studio setup is so common, and so you kind of have to learn how to do that, because it's either do it yourself or pay thousands of dollars for someone else to do it. and where does that money come from?
Yeah.
So welcome to being a recording engineer, the job you never knew you didn't
Yeah.
want.
And you like wrote and recorded most of this album like mostly by yourself, right? I know you've had like a little bit of collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've mostly worked on these songs since like most of them have been written since 2021. There's like a couple of them that are older. But I've mostly worked on these here in this house, in this studio. And It's been mostly a process of just doing all of it myself. For a little while there, I had kind of a band going with a couple good friends of mine that I've been in a lot of bands with before. And so we had kind of a rock band version of Scurvy Rickets happening where we did some of these songs. And I was fortunate enough that we did record the drums on three of the songs during at the tail end of that time that I was jamming with those guys. And so David Zai, my good friend of mine from way back, he did the drums and Don recorded them for Gasoline and Sophistication, and I knew the words, and so it was really awesome having him as a drummer on those songs and on this album. And then it was also like a real challenge because then when I had to do the drums for some of the other songs like Well Enough Alone and Role Model and stuff, it was like, oh gosh, like I gotta try to like keep up with David Zeiss as a drummer. Like he's been drumming since we were in high school, and I've been like trying to learn drumming the last couple of years. And he's my favorite drummer. Like I love David. He's so good. He plays just exactly what I want to happen on a song. He just like he knows it and he does it. Like we barely have to communicate about music. He's right there and he does it so well. And so I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have his drums on this album sounding like so good, and then I'm gonna be doing drums on the rest of the songs. I really need my drums to not just sound like garbage next to his.
And I think like with that drum stuff is that's kind of where I've seen some of the most like transformation from the demos, like especially as a drummer myself too. Like
Yeah.
I think that's one of the areas where in some of the earlier demos, some of the drum playing in there kind of made me cringe a little.
Yeah.
Just kind of seeing how those evolved to where they are now, and like now you can hardly tell the difference between the drums on those songs you mentioned that other
Yeah.
guy did and
Oh man.
the ones where you did it. Like
That means a lot. I was stressing hard, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I was working so a lot of that was this summer. Some of it was last fall, and it was it was just it was the kind of thing where like I hadn't really gotten my drum chops up that well to like playing drums in general last summer fall that I started working on drums on these songs. Prior to that, I just had like programmed drum beats that, I just kind of draw a drum beat in the software so that I can keep the time and I can record music to it because I don't like recording to that BB click thing. I want just like a drum beat, even if it's just a basic drum beat that doesn't change throughout the song, just something to keep the time. So I'd, record guitars and vocals to all that and then kind of come through late in the process to record a drum part, which is a weird way to do recording, but it makes sense in a home studio setup when you're doing it by yourself. It's hard to start with drums, without any music there. So it was the kind of thing where like playing drums in general isn't something that I'm real comfortable with, but I'm playing this one song over and over and over again and working out a part for it. And I can, over the span of a week or so that I'm like working on this and working out what the part's going to be and practicing it. and recording what I've got so that I can hear it, it would kind of slowly take shape. And that was, some of the versions of those demos where the drums are really rough. Like, that was as part of that process. And where, just I'd be working on a song and it's like, I don't really have this part down yet. It doesn't sound great, but I need to record it so that I can listen to it and kind of internalize the part in my mind. Like for me, practicing, like half of practicing is just listening to recordings I have, because if the song is in my head, then I can do it much better. So I would kind of learn the drum part by recording a pretty rough version of it, but it's there enough for me to hear what it's supposed to be. And then, tolerating the terrible differences where I flub this thing and this is offbeat and all these kind of mistakes and issues. But nevertheless, I can like hear what it's supposed to be. And then the worse it sounds, the more I'm like, I need to get in there and like do, work on it again to make it sound better. So it's kind of motivating having the recordings of them with that kind of garbagey sounding drum tracks in that interim stage before I'm finally able to get some solid sounding takes, which is usually a lot of editing. Like, I'm recording the drums on this. I was not a drummer, but I was able to get drums recorded and able to edit them together, multiple tracks and shifting things in time. Like, oh, I hit that a little soon. I gotta kind of like stretch it or move it back or whatever to kind of get things to be synced up and feel tight, because it makes such a difference on how the song feels when the drums and everything are really tight together. And so there's a lot of editing going on of all the guitars and bass and drums to make everything sound tight. Because I think it's harder to do in a home studio setup where you're doing everything layer by layer by layer instead of, in a room with a band full of guys all playing together at the same time. Plus technical issues. Like I just worked out fixing like how to edit latency. So like to try to make things be more in time as you're recording them instead of having like the delay of electronics, the signal getting there in time. So many technical things to learn in recording. So yeah, the getting drums was a whole journey. All the drums that I recorded were with my electronic drum set. I just got an acoustic drum set, but I did not have that for recording this album. So that was also a challenge, was like, David played his acoustic drum set and I had a professional recording engineer recording that acoustic drum set by a professional drummer, someone who's been doing it for decades. And then I was trying to match that here at home with like amateur drummer on an electric drum set, trying to play like rock and roll punk rock drums. That's just not really the same thing. So it was a lot of challenge there, getting it to sound the way I wanted and getting the parts to lay out smoothly and in time and everything. But I got through it.
Yeah, I think it turned out pretty well. Were there any other like major challenges you had throughout recording this album?
Oh God, singing.
Yeah,
singing was a whole journey. I've never had a good singing voice, and I've never really had a good sense of where I was supposed to be singing, like register wise. I grew up listening to Dashboard Confessional and punk rock music and emo music and just like all this music where rock and roll in general is full of singers singing relatively high pitched and like projecting really hard. Like rock and roll is about intensity, and so the vocals tend to reflect that by being very projecting a lot, particularly on big powerful choruses and stuff. And man, do I not do that well. Like I it took me a long time to figure out that my register is much lower than I, for some reason, ever thought it was growing up. Like, I think growing up, I thought because I'm kind of a small guy, I don't have or shouldn't have like a lower voice, but I do. And it took me a long time to realize that, like, especially singing, like, the range that I can control my voice in is very limited, and it's much lower than rock and pop music usually is. And so I've been learning over the last few years how I've been learning about how to write songs that fit my register. So my more recent songs, I can sing them a lot more naturally, and it sounds good, just like without a lot of effort on my part. Not to say that it sounds like a professional singer, but I'm not like straining to make a pitch work. I can kind of get there all right. But on this album, a lot of these songs were written while I was still very much figuring that out. So some songs were harder than others to make the to make the part work in terms of where my register is. And then it just took a lot of practice, just doing these songs a lot over the years. I've gotten better at singing along the way. I've never done lessons for singing or anything else. I just kind of figure things out. But over the years, I've figured out how to use my voice better. And so between that and auto tune, so pitch correction, I've been able to, get these songs to sound where I'm not cringing to hear my own voice on it. So that's good enough. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a big fan of editing and correction and all of these things that you can do to fake a perfect performance. I've never had a perfect performance of any song in my life, period. Like, that's just not who I am as a musician. But as a songwriter, I have in my head this perfect version of the song. And so when I'm recording these, that's my goal. Like, every new demo that I put out, when I listen to it, and I listen to them a lot, I am always hearing the difference between what's recorded so far and what this like prototypical version of this song in my head is, and where those differences are. And so the recording process just keeps going over and over and over. I keep doing new versions of the song, re-recording the guitar, re-recording the vocals, editing stuff, mixing stuff, until I can't find any more problems. And sometimes it's just, well, it isn't perfect, but it's the best I can do, and that's just going to have to be good enough, So, it's not to say that everything does come out perfect, but sometimes it gets there, and when it doesn't, it's the best I can do with what I have at the time, and I feel good about it. And when I reach that point, I'll find myself like listening to the song and just kind of be relaxed about it, and I'm able to just like enjoy the song itself. Like, I start singing along with it like I'm listening to one of my favorite bands. I'm just like, oh, singing along, and that's when I know I've gotten there. I'm like, like, I'm not thinking hard about like what's terrible about this. I'm just like enjoying the song. So we've gotten there.
I think that's a kind of cool idea and perspective on all the editing and all that. Because, like, I mean, to me, it seems like you're kind of not letting your creativity be like quite as limited by your own abilities or limitations that you may have, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
instead of like, I feel like a lot of times people may see things like auto tune or all that editing kind of stuff as kind of cheating in a way or something, but
Yeah.
instead you're just using it as a tool to kind of help you get your songs or whatever like to the point where you want them. They're just kind of
Yeah.
helpful instead of like cheating in a way.
Yeah, definitely. If I held myself to that standard, I wouldn't finish music. And then I would be a stifled, unhappy artist. I would not have several albums out. I would be toiling away, or actually, probably more likely, I would be ignoring one unfinished album that I couldn't get done. And that's not where I want to. I've got too many songs in me to be, you know, to be belaboring every single one of these songs to the end of the earth. Like, good enough's good enough. Like, with each album that I do, with each song I record, I get better at the process. And so I would rather record 50, so songs that get better and better and better until I can record and publish, high professional, glossy, perfect songs than, spend forever trying to make song one sound that way. I'm a big fan of iteration as an artist, and recognizing that with the knowledge and the tools and the expertise I have, this is what I can do, and that by finishing this, I can do better on the next one, because I learn more by finishing a project than I do by, just attacking the same thing over and over and over again. So, I'm I'm first and foremost a songwriter more than I'm a performer, and that's what I really want to get to. Is I want to produce these songs well enough to leave them behind and move on to the next song. And that's what's always most exciting to me about finishing an album, is just like, finally I can be done working on these songs and work on the next set. I'm so excited to work on the next thing, but these have to be done before I can really make that space in my brain and in my life, for those things. And then as I take on the next set of songs, I'm able to come at them with new expertise and new experience, and I'm able to start those from just like a much better place, than I did the last set. So I'm excited about the next project going forward. That I've already done a little bit of work on a couple of songs, and I'm like, man, this is like sounding good and going easy. Like, compared to the last album, this is cake.
Yeah, that's I mean, something you've talked to me about before in the past, and has honestly been like really helpful, and like for me creatively, like that idea of not spending too much time trying to perfect one thing, and kind of learn over time with a series of things. And I mean, that's kind of what helped me be able to like have a couple books published and be working on more stuff,
Yeah.
now, instead of just still being stuck on those first ones. And I think that's a like very important thing for like anyone who's doing anything creatively to remember and try to apply.
Yeah, I think as artists, I think it's a thing we fear, that we will put something out into the world and then we'll be embarrassed about it. But honestly, I think that's a really great place to be. If you are, if things are going well for you as an artist, then you will look back on earlier work and be like, ooh, I could do so much better than that.
Yeah.
Like, that's good. That means you're growing and you're progressing. Like, the last thing I want to do is have the first thing I ever did be the best thing I ever did. Like, I really, and actually there's this book I read some years ago. What was it called? I can't remember, but it it was a book that analyzed artists as it kind of divided artists in general into two categories. One is conceptual artist, and the other is a experimental. I think was the word they feel like it was a different word, but it was kind of similar meaning anyway. The idea was that conceptual artists or artists like, say, Pablo Picasso, where as young people, teens, early 20s, their earliest work has the biggest impact because they come at art with this revolutionary perspective, these revolutionary ideas that totally change the landscape of the art form. So like in music, that would be artists like Nirvana. Nirvana hit in the 90s and it totally transformed what rock music looked like, and it's not like nobody had ever done anything that they'd done, but they were part of that, early movement away from the 80s rock style of things and into what would become like the 90s alternative. And to these conceptual artists, their most important work is always very early in their career. And that's not who I am as an artist. The experimental kind of artist is an artist that they peak later in life in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s even. They spend their life doing things and trying things and experimenting and kind of slowly honing in and refining their skills and finding their voice, finding their way. So like in painting, Monet would be an example of that. Like one of his famous works is the water lilies, which is not one painting, it's a whole bunch of them. He didn't have like, he didn't make a specific splash with, one specific painting that changed painting. It was his collective career that was of significance. It was how he approached his work in this kind of ongoing iterative way. What if I try it this way? What if I try it that way? What if I try it this way? And that's more me as an artist, I think, is, I've never had crazy revolutionary ideas that could change the face of art as we know it, but I can iterate and iterate and iterate and slowly get better and better and better until, something good and meaningful starts to come out of it. And so, but to get there, you've got to be willing to labor through some rough stuff along the way. It's not going to start out amazing. So you really have to do it for the love of it, and to love the process of learning and growing and getting better. And I do. And for me, publishing is a critical part of that process. It's just, you know, calling well enough, calling good enough, and moving on to the next one, because that's part of that iterative process that grows me as an artist, is to publish it and get it out there, and then move on to the next thing.
So yes, kind of getting a bit more into this new album, Songbook specifically. Are there any kind of key intentions or inspirations or anything you had going into it that you wanted to accomplish with this album, whether it be through the music itself or the story you're trying to tell?
I wouldn't say that there was anything specific going in. It really more emerged over time. The one of the reasons why it's important to me to try to publish on a fairly regular basis is that the songs I write are kind of anchored in time for me. And these songs are very much reflective of this time period from like 2020 to 2023, 4. I feel like at this moment in time, I am in some ways kind of have moved past and am moving past the time of life that these songs represent into new stages of life. And so this album just kind of took shape out of the songs that I was writing during those years and what was going on with me during those years. And I couldn't have told you what that was when I was writing the songs and when I started to conceptualize the album, which was like, I use YouTube I have a channel that's called Scurvy Rickets Demos that is just where it's a sandbox for me to work in. It's not really like a channel for sharing my songs as an artist. It's available, but it's really more of a tool for me to reflect my songs back at me. And I have a general playlist on there that's just like all my songs. It's just Scurvy Rickets, and there's been roughly 50 songs on there for several years now, give or take. Whenever I finish publishing an album, it comes out of that playlist because it's no longer a demo. Now it's finished, so then it makes its way out of there. So those are just songs that are written but not published. And this album took shape out of that playlist. It was like, I was trying to figure out, okay, what of all these songs, what do I want to work on and put out next? And, there's a lot of songs that are older than these in that playlist. And there were songs that were newer than some of these in that playlist, but these were the ones that just kind of instinctually stood out to me, either as being like more finishable or just kind of called to me more that I wanted to work on them more specifically. And that's something I don't think real hard about. There's not a lot of logic to it. It's just more of a intuition, a vibe, like, yeah, let's work on that one. Let's do that one. Let's do that one. I kind of threw them in a playlist and listened to the playlist for a while, kind of getting the vibe for what it was going to be like. And it changed a little bit. There's a couple songs that I had in there that I took out. There was a couple songs I thought I was going to put in there, and then I ended up doing them on different projects before I got that far. And so, it was kind of a discovery process to figure out what this album is, what it was going to be. And you were incredibly helpful in figuring that out. I sent the playlist to you and asked you about, like, what do you think of these songs? Like, how would you, order them, flow them in an album? And you texted me back a bunch of long texts. Like,
I had a lot of fun with that.
I was like, "Late, check this out. He is going, man." It was incredible. Like, I knew that there was something there kind of there were some themes in there tying some of these songs together. And the way that you came back at me with, like, here's an order that I can see it. And I had kind of roughly ordered them, and you kind of took that and changed a few things, and gave me a really nice reasoning behind for why each song would follow each other. And I pretty much stuck to that almost exactly. I think I swapped out one or two songs after that, but
still a little upset about Like the Rent being taken out. I really like that one.
Yeah, that's an interesting song. I'm not sure what to I'm not sure what to do with that one yet. But it just didn't fit the story, which after you got back to me with that ordering the playlist order, that's really when the story started to lock in for me. And which is not something that I really try to do intentionally with albums, but it's just something I find myself doing anyway. Is like every album ends up being a story, a narrative, beginning to end, however literal or loose that may be. Like there ends up being an arc to it that I appreciate, and that's, it's the process of finding that in the album was much like the process of finding it in the songs. Because when I write songs, it's I don't usually know what I'm writing up front. I might figure it out by the time I'm like a verse and a chorus into the song, and sometimes it takes longer than that to really know like what a song is about, what it means, what I'm saying. But by the time I figure it out, it's always like, oh, well, obviously that's deeply personal and totally all the stuff that I've been wrestling with for the last 3 months. So obviously that's what this is, like, but I don't know. There's like this kind of like blind naivete during the like creation process where it's just like, writing songs is like, it's just it seems to just kind of be my subconscious telling me what I know. It's just like, dude, you're struggling with this thing, you better put it in a song. And by the time I'm done, I'm like, okay, that's what that is.
I can definitely relate to that, especially with my poetry writing. There have been many times I've just sat down to write something and I write it all out, and I have no idea what I just wrote that about, and then I come back to it later and I'm like, exactly like you did. Like I'm like, oh, yep. Yeah, that's all the stuff I was thinking about or struggling with all this time just laid out in front of me, and I didn't know it at the time though. But with like with the album telling that story and all that, like I personally love, especially like when an album tells some sort of story through, or at least has like some sort of progression throughout it, and kind of makes it feel like a cohesive narrative in a way, whether it's lyrically or musically or whatever, just having kind of that connection throughout the whole thing. So then when you sent me that playlist and asked me to kind of find the story within these songs and put them in an order that made sense, that like got me really excited, and I was immediately locked in and gave it the best attempt I could at fitting together your story in a way with those songs.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like the themes of this song are kind of mature, relevant to a middle-aged man. So I'm curious what a young fella like yourself, about pretty exactly half my age, what do you get out of this album? Like what is, there's what I put into it, but once art is made and someone is, listening to it or watching it or whatever, it becomes theirs. So I'm curious, like, what is this album to you? What is Jaden's songbook?
You stole my question. I was about to ask you what the story kind of was to you, but I guess you beat me to it. I wanted to see what your thoughts on it were, but at least for me, kind of in a general sense throughout the album, I kind of see it as like when I was looking at the story, I wasn't necessarily thinking specifically of like you as the narrator. Like of course you are, but I was just trying to kind of see it as a like look at it a bit more objectively, and just like like an anonymous narrator throughout, and was just kind of seeing like starts off with like this main narrator person, whoever, and kind of maybe not like in the best place in life, like struggling with some things, has things to deal with, and it's just maybe a little bit more lost or whatever in a way. And throughout the album, you kind of, throughout those first few songs, I kind of see that as some of them a bit of expression of some of the struggles or whatever, and first trying to kind of work through some of those things, and then as it gets a little bit farther in, like I feel like there's a lot more like questioning and stuff like in some of those earlier ones, and then as you get to like I feel like I knew the words, like the sixth one is kind of a bit of a turning point in a way, like kind of starting to overcome some things and I guess like resist and fight back in a way, like in a sense, like those whatever conflicts you may have in your life or whatever at the time. And then like those next couple of songs are kind of then I guess kind of starting to see where you are and where you want to get to in a way, and like with Say What and Role Model, and then Where I Wanted to Go, like those ones kind of facing things a bit more head on and kind of seeing that, like being a bit more hopeful and seeing where you want to continue on from there, like instead of being completely lost like it was earlier on, like you kind of have some direction now and you're kind of dealing with things more directly and all that, and then kind of end up in a place in the end, like with Safe Home and It's a Bounty, where you've kind of reached that like conclusion and have gotten to a like much better place in a way, and have kind of found your place with yourself and with like community. Like I feel like community is like a strong theme within a lot of your work and everything, and like kind of finding that place with yourself and in the world and in your community and all that kind of in the end, like that personal growth and journey through life in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, taking it. Yeah, it's a very personal album, but it's kind of bookended with the song "It's a Bounty," which really is all about that community aspect. It's kind of about how our place as a person fits with the community and what that looks like going outward, and that kind of comes from a thought that I've had a lot over recent years. Several years ago I was paying close attention to politics and just so disappointed in political leaders and in the like selfishness and corruption and all of that, and thinking about just the people that seek power and how the people that seek power are usually not the ones that deserve it, and how like what ideally the people that are leading at the highest levels will have gotten there through a progression of growth, where they first are healing themselves and then are able to to be meaningful leaders in their family unit, healing, being a part of the healing process of a family, and then a healing part of the community and a healing part of their town and their state. And those are the people that we would eventually want to reach, Congress and president and stuff like that. Is like if your home isn't healthy, why would we want you to lead our community? Like if you are not part of making a community healthy, why would we want you to lead our state? Like that kind of idea. And so the album's kind of bookended with that like question of like kind of trying to paint a picture of what would it look like to have a tight-knit community that is healthy and connected, and how do you make that happen? And then it kind of goes in from there to then kind of shrink back to the individual and then show, you know, the individual's journey. And for obviously this individual is me and my journey to just going through my adulthood and figuring out how to work through the, you know, the personal issues I've had, the circumstances that I was, you know, born into, raised up with, the you know, the relationship struggles to find a way to fit and not be a harmful, toxic person in the lives of those around me, but to be, you know, more than that, and to kind of start that process of, you know, healing at the individual level, healing at the family level, and starting to find that way into the community level of things. And so, yeah, the that arc that you describe is, you know, it's definitely right on the money. But shall we go ahead and give a listen to the first song then?
Sure.
And kind of go from there?
Really quick, just kind of going off of what you said there. It kind of reminded me of that idea that I've been told like several times by many people, of that thing of like how you kind of have to love yourself before you can like show love to others truly. And I feel like this album kind of starts off in a point where you're not really like at peace with yourself and everything, and kind of have a lot of anger or frustrations or just unrest in ways, and throughout kind of shows that journey of like self-acceptance and getting to that better place, so then in the end you can find that community and family and have like people and whatever that you can love in your life. And yeah, that stuff you were talking about kind of made me think of that. And,
Yeah, man.
yeah. But yeah. Let's get into the first song.
All right. This is It's a Bounty that opens the album. And the first thing you hear are wind chimes, which is from my front porch. Men have shared their tales, their laughter, joy, and dale, the memories they've earned. The women share their dreams, their coffee poured with cream, what they've yet to learn. The children sing and play their games, eager for their turn. It's a moment, it's a bounty, it's enough. What will it take to make these days linger on? So a really important part of that song for me is the wind chimes. Um, you know, this is the first verse of the song. It's the song comes back at the end as a reprise. So, I'd written it as a verse, chorus, but then I split it up for the album because the the first verse and second verse kind of subtly represent two different kind of aspects of community to me. Like the first verse is kind of where it feels like daytime to me, and it's like where everything's real good. They're sharing stories, they're singing, they're playing, everything's really happy and joyous. And that aspect of when I think about community like that, when I imagine, the a close, healthy community, which I'm fortunate to say that I experience in a lot of ways right here in my own neighborhood, is pretty special and unique neighborhood in that way where we all know each other and we have neighborhood events and we work on things together, and it's really cool. It's a kind of a special thing to be a part of. And when I think of that, it's always very outside to me, like out in nature. And so the recording of the wind chimes on my front porch on a windy day really evokes that outside nature aspect of community. And Elaine and I were just talking today. We were out on the porch this morning drinking our coffee, which is a totally normal thing we do all the time. And I was telling her how I just had a friend over on Saturday who he was sitting on the porch with me, and we were drinking a couple of beers, and it was a beautiful day, and it was just quiet and nice out there, and there's plants on the porch. It's pretty. There's old trees in the neighborhood. It's just a good vibe. And he made a comment about how he was like, I don't think I've ever had a day where I just sat out on a front porch like this and just enjoyed a nice, quiet, beautiful day with a friend. And he was like, I think I might cry. Like he was like really like taken aback by the lack of this very simple experience in his life, and how good it felt to just stop and sit on a porch with a friend and enjoy a beautiful day. And that's something that I've kind of cultivated throughout my life. I can look back at everywhere I've lived, and this is by far the biggest, best porch and the most like grand situation that I've personally lived in. But even in very humble beginnings as a 20-something-year-old, I've always kind of cultivated that experience of being able to go outside and sit and read a book and drink coffee or smoke a pipe or something, to just relax and enjoy the outside, and to have a space to sit and talk with friends late into the night or whatever. And Elaine and I were talking about how there aren't a lot of porches like that anymore. Houses that were built 100 years ago, there's always a front porch. The old neighborhoods have front porches all over the place. But if you look at homes that have been built since, I don't know, 50s, 60s, and the big, expensive, fancy houses on the outside of town, there's no front porches. Like, they might have back decks. They might be in their backyard with privacy fence, secluded in their own personal space. But that aspect of being in the front of your house and being kind of available to your immediate community is kind of gone. Like, Elaine and I sit out there on the porch all the time, and we wave at our neighbors as they walk by, walking their dog or going on a jog or whatever, and so there's that, there's that kind of openness and connectedness from that front porch vibe, and so in my head, that's what the wind chimes represent to me, is like that outside communal space where friends and neighbors can and do see each other and talk to each other and can gather to drink beer and share stories, and kids can play and da 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 da, and so that's kind of this like dream picture of mine that this song is painting, and then ends with asking, the question, what will it take to make these days linger on? Like this moment that's happening, that it's bountiful, it's everything. This is what people live for. How do we make this the regular existence? How do we make this be everyday life? And I don't know the answers to that, but that's the question, is like, this is what everybody's after, is love and community and connection. And how do we make that happen? And so that kind of, it's the album kind of starts by asking that question, and then goes into Gasoline, which then asks another question, which is, will we burn it all down? So you want to give that one a listen?
Uh-huh.
Or did you have any other questions about It's a Bounty or anything?
I definitely think like a lot of that stuff you talked about very much comes through in the song, and I personally really like how this song truly feels like an introduction into this album, and kind of is in a way sort of a bit of like exposition leading into the story before getting into it. And I know, at least for me personally, whenever I hear this song, what I envision is always like your porch concert events. Like every time I hear this song, like all I see like in my mind is those concerts you've had here at your house on the porch, and like that whole community of like, I feel like a lot of the stuff you describe in the lyrics of this song are kind of true of that. Like there's always like the kids off playing the different games you have out, and people just talking around, having a drink or whatever, and just a like wider array of the community around. And
it's
like
I love that about those concerts. Like, we've got elderly folk that are there, that are, people that live in the neighborhood, or people that I know from poetry group or the Way of Light choir, like, and then we've got kids playing, we've got teenagers, we've got, middle-aged parents with 2 or 3 kids in tow of various ages. Like, it's a whole mix of people of all, like, races, demographics, from different areas of Topeka. A lot of them know each other, some of them don't, but like kind of everybody knows someone there, It's a really special day for me, having these concerts on my porch. It's such a big porch, and in this Potwin is a historic neighborhood. It's a really special community, like I said, and I don't feel like I own this house. Like, I feel like I'm a steward of this house. Like, this house has been here. This was the second house on this block in 1886. This was before Topeka even reached here. Like, Potwin was its own city, and Topeka hadn't gotten here yet. And then after this house was built, and Topeka kept growing and growing, Topeka eventually surrounded Potwin, and then Potwin became part of Topeka. So there's just a lot of, history here. It's the kind of thing where people in the neighborhood can tell you everyone that lived in this house since 1886. It hasn't been that many families. There's been a few families that have lived here that have had they've played significant roles in the neighborhood over the years. And so, this house, this neighborhood is special, and it's not mine to do anything I please with. It's mine to live in with my family, and to, I feel a responsibility to care for it and to share it. That porch is huge. I love it. It's my favorite place in the world, and I don't feel like I can keep it to myself. So the porch concert is kind of my way to like share it with the neighborhood, share it with the city of Topeka, invite artists to come and play on the porch, and invite friends and neighbors and friends of friends and anybody that wants to come to set up a lawn chair and hang out and listen to music, and just kind of be with the community together, whether that's people in this immediate neighborhood, whether that's people that I know from, this group or that group or whatever. You've got kind of a cross section of people from all over Topeka, and they're just wonderful people that I know in all of these different ways. So being able to kind of have those porch concerts, like you said, kind of represent that microcosm of like what it looks like when a community comes together and just enjoys space together. There's all the differences between all of those people. They don't matter for a few hours. We're just all there enjoying each other and enjoying some good music and some good food and watching the kids play, and the weather's nice, and that's all it is, So
And get into Gasoline?
yeah. All right, so track 2 is Gasoline.
I'm feeling overrated, I'm feeling old. I can't escape the everyday, I feel the same. Every day I feel the cold. I got a great idea, I got it sold. I only gotta make a camp because I'm scared, and I'm scared because oh, 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 oh. If there's a place in this world for me, then there's a place that I have to be. There's nothing scarier I could dream. Yeah, 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 yeah. And if the air in this world is free, then why has it been choking me with fumes of gasoline? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been the underrated and undersold. I've been the venerated, couldn't breathe the air, couldn't breathe it to a soul, couldn't breathe it. And now I know, if there's a place in this world for me, and there's a place that I have to be, there's nothing scarier I could dream. Yeah, 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 yeah. But if the air in this world is free, then why has it been choking me with fumes of gasoline? Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're on the edge of an aftermath. We'll light a match, and that is that, and that is that. Yeah, that is that. Ooh, yeah, 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 yeah. If there's a place in this world for me, and there's a place that I have to be, there's nothing scarier I could dream. Yeah, yeah. I'll just take everything left to me, put it out there for all to see, and soak it in gasoline. Yeah, yeah. And if the air in this world is free, then why has it been choking me with fumes of gasoline? Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, 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 yeah, 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 yeah.
I really like that song a lot.
It's a lot of fun.
That's one of that's one of my favorite songs I've written. It's, you know, sometimes I write something, I'm like, dang, did I do that? That sounds good, man.
This one, as I kind of said, like story wise, this one kind of feels like that kind of being lost in life a bit in a way. Like there in like the first verse, it kind of has that stuff about how I can't escape the everyday. I feel the same, and I got this great idea. I got it sold. I only got to make it. Can't because I'm scared, and I'm scared because and all that. Like it feels like kind of not being where you want to be, kind of feeling lost, but kind of dreaming of something better, like wishing you could do something more with your life or whatever, like kind of wishing you had something but feeling like so limited, and just kind of questioning like is the like I guess kind of going into the chorus where it says like, if there's a place in this world for me and there's a place that I have to be, there's nothing scary I could dream in, and like going on with all that, like kind of questioning like, is there a place for me in this world? Like are my dreams possible to come true, and like could I ever get to that place I want to be, is kind of how I see a lot of this song lyrically. And I don't know if that's how you intended it or what you were trying to say, but yeah, that's kind of what I get out of it.
It's interesting because I think the like you're very on the money in a lot of ways in terms of what I was coming from, but I think the differences in how you take it from how I meant it illustrates the differences in our age and where we're at in life. You know, it's for me, writing this song was not so much about wanting to, you know, can I find a place to be? It's more of a midlife crisis kind of song where it's like you have it and that's the problem, you know, like so this, you know, this song I wrote this song at a time where I felt like I was arriving in life. Like I was arriving to having a home, having a family, having a loving relationship with a partner that I respect and admire. And it's like, I'm looking around and going like, where's the like ongoing crisis I should be facing? You know, like I've been in crisis mode for the last almost 20 years. Why is everything okay? You know,
Yeah.
And I was watching, you know, so that was like a thing. When life is a struggle, you know, when you go through hard times and hard times go on for years and years and years, things can become good and you can still be in a hard times mindset, and that can ruin things. You know, if you don't come out of crisis mode in your mind, you can recreate crisis where it didn't need to exist.
I definitely get that.
And so this song I was watching, me and Elaine were watching the television show You. It's a Netflix show about a man who's a serial killer. And he spoilers, he like, there's this woman he's obsessed with, and that's kind of his thing. He gets obsessed with someone and he like stalks them and watches them and blah blah blah, and it's all about that, like that stalkery fantasy thing for him, right? And so there's the like twist at the end of the first season, or Yeah. The if I remember correctly, the twist at the end of the first season is that this woman that he's stalking, and he sees her as this like innocent, virtuous, perfect woman, is actually like a psychotic killer too. And they end up in a relationship at the beginning of season 2, and it's like, what could be more perfect? This psychotic killer who, obsessed with and in love with this woman who also turns out to be a psychotic killer and loves him for the psychotic killer that he is. And what does he do? He immediately starts like obsessing over and stalking the neighbor instead. And he's just like immediately starts self-sabotaging what seems like it should have been this perfect situation, And the like ridiculousness of that scenario, it just hit me so hard. I was just like, oh man, like that's the most like midlife crisis thing I've ever seen in my life. It's just, this serial killer that gets the perfect situation and then has to immediately sabotage it. And so that was the like inspiration for writing this song, was that episode and the ridiculousness of that scenario, and relating it back to just kind of that midlife crisis experience that is so common to men that it's a trope, where you look at the first verse. He's feeling overrated, old, can't escape the everyday, feels the same, and it's just kind of like, oh, like life has kind of turned into this grind. And it's like, that in that midlife crisis trope, it's always these men that are successful in business, have a beautiful wife and family and a nice home and the dog, and everything is like wonderful, and they're miserable. Like, and it's not that, they're, the miserableness is of their own making. It's the inability to appreciate and connect to all these good things they have. They're in the never-ending struggle to get more, the ambitious career thing, but never coming out of that mindset to then have and appreciate and experience the daily moments with the family that you grew, with the woman that you love, and the house that you bought. Like, never taking the time to appreciate that leads to this like sense of loss and of listlessness and despair. And in the second verse, kind of expands on that a little bit. There's, kind of being underappreciated and being overappreciated, and none of it really seems to matter, because as soon as the man feels like he has a place in the world, it immediately starts to feel suffocating. You get everything you want and it feels like a trap, just that kind of sense. And so, it paints the picture of this man who's just like, he has everything and he's one step away from just burning it all down.
Too good to be true.
Yeah. Just like he's just right on that edge and just might light a match and set the whole thing on fire. So that was present in my mind at the time, because like I said, it was, a time in my life where it was like all this, chaos and ongoing change throughout my adulthood, and just kind of one thing after another kind of finally started to wind its way down into a place of stability and family and love and community. And I was, it was work for me to take myself out of that mindset that things have to be a struggle, and to, wondering to myself, like, how do I now that I have this, what do I do? And the answer wasn't difficult for me to come to, because I'd kind of already come to the answer before in life, because as my previous partner passed from cancer, that made it very clear to me in life that every moment with the people you love matters. And so, like, you're not guaranteed the future. You don't know what's going to happen. And so, it can be hard to be, like, to wonder what's the point of doing the dishes when, someone can just then die. Like when you compare like the insaneness of losing someone you love that much to the mundaneness of doing the dishes or making a cup of coffee, it's hard to imagine how you do one after the other, but you do, like, because it all matters. Like, life isn't about just the big things. It's about every tiny little thing too. And so, as I was kind of coming to myself wondering, like, what do I do with this life that's taking shape around me and has this kind of sense of stability? And it was like, well, you stop and you appreciate it and you relish it, whether that's making a cup of coffee or doing dishes or playing a concert on the porch or, editing, tediously editing drums for 2 hours, like, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Appreciate it for what it is. It all matters. But so kind of in the larger, that was where I was coming from personally. And in the kind of narrative of the album, it's kind of, I feel like the album kind of does this thing where it at the beginning it contracts. It zooms out from this like community aspect and it's a bounty to this man in his middle age who's at this point where he might burn it all down, and then from there kind of contracts further to that man as a young man in the next song, in Sophistication. And then I think that's starting with Sophistication is where it then starts to expand from there to kind of go through the arc to the rest of the album. So the Gasoline kind of shows you the picture of this man who has everything and might burn it all down, and then kind of goes back to the beginning to paint the picture of where this man came from and how he progressed through his life to this point where he has, the everything that he wanted, and then doesn't burn it all down. Comes to appreciate it and all of that. So I'll play Sophistication. Mm-hmm. So this song is actually not one I wrote. It was written by my good friend Martinez Hillard. He used to play it when we were youngins in our early 20s. He'd play it around town at the coffee shops and such. And so this is actually one of the oldest songs that I know how to play on the guitar, and decided to cover it because I love this song. It's always spoken to me.
Pack of cigarettes, and now you started going downtown. You always trying to make the scene, but they don't want you hanging round.
can't buy sophistication. Yeah. You can't buy determination. Yeah. I don't know what could make you understand. You can't hold problems in your hand. Now everybody's coming in, and they all want to get a piece. Oh yeah, you think you're making friends, but they're just people that you meet. You're calm, collected, and you're cool, but it don't really mean a thing. Don't want the money or the fame, just want the happiness it brings. Oh yeah, you thought it would, yeah, you thought it would, but you can't buy sophistication. Yeah. You can't buy determination. Yeah. I don't know what could make you understand. You can't hold problems in your hand. Problems in your hand. In your hand. Gotta love that song. So that song, so Marty wrote that when he was like, I don't know, 19 years old or something. And it's such an experience to come at this song in my 40s because it sounds like a song that was written by a 40-something-year-old man. You know, like he was just he's such a brilliant songwriter, and like his ability to write this song that's like 20 years ahead of his own time, you know, it's just so him. You know, it's kind of, the song's kind of looking at this young man who's so like, he's so hungry. He's so hungry for recognition. He's so hungry to fit in. He's so hungry to have a place in his, you know, in the scene. You know, he's a scene kid or something, you know, like trying to show up and be cool, smoking his first pack of cigarettes and trying to like make a name for himself and all of this. And, you know, it sounds like it's coming from the voice of someone who's been there and is like kind of shaking their head a little bit or something, like, you know, you're trying really hard, but you can't buy sophistication, you know, like that's, you gotta come by that. Honestly, it takes, you know, the experience and the growth. You can try to be cool all you want, but you know, that comes from the life experience kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I don't know how Marty wrote this song at 19. Blows my mind.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I saw in it too. I feel like this one's pretty straightforward lyrically, but like kind of fitting into that narrative I saw in it. Of course, coming from Gasoline, like that guy kind of being a little bit lost and wanting that direction and everything. I saw this one as him sort of trying to start like progressing toward something, like trying to get something more in life, but kind of going about it in the wrong ways and kind of starting to learn some hard truths about life and trying to like make a name for yourself in a way. And yeah, just kind of those initial struggles and failures and lessons that he starts to learn as he starts trying to make his way out in the world and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids grow up seeing whoever they admire, whether that's, movie stars or basketball players or rock stars or whatever. And there's kind of that disconnect between you see the respect and admiration that they get, you see the riches and the accomplishments, and you want that. And those early efforts of this young man in this song is him going out there trying to get that, but you don't get that. That's a side effect of what you do, So you can tie a line from the young man in Gasoline from the young man in Sophistication to the old man in Gasoline, where, the old man in Gasoline has finally done that. He's put in 20 years of hard work at his job or whatever, and he's got the success to show for it. But the everything that his 20-year-old self would have been like, wow, everything that his 20-year-old self was after, the middle-aged man struggles to appreciate, so it kind of comes for the middle-aged man. There's that challenge, that need, that thing to where, he needs to appreciate and relish what he has. The young man that isn't there yet, his challenge is to not worry about the recognition, not worry about the glory, not worry about the riches, not worry about the acknowledgement or the appreciation, but to rather put his head down and put in the work. And not just to put the head down and put in the work, because if you just put your head down and you just put in the work and you never look up, that's how you end up the middle-aged man who doesn't know how to appreciate it. It's about putting in the work every day and appreciating the process every day. Not worrying about the end, but enjoying the means. How you get there matters, and because you don't know if you'll get there. Life can end anytime. It can change directions anytime. Life is chaos. And so you make your plans and follow them. But if you're going to depend on that plan coming to fruition in order to have happiness, then that's a bad recipe for life. I love the line at the end of the second verse where he says, "Don't want the money or the fame, just want the happiness it brings." And it's like, man, like that's it right there. Like,
Yeah.
That it's easy to confuse one for the other. And it's kind of this like moment of insight maybe for this young man. Like, in his heart, he knows what he wants is that happiness, whatever happiness is. And there's this acknowledgement that it is not necessarily the money or the riches, but that's kind of still what he's posturing towards and like working for. Like he hasn't really figured out where is this happiness exactly. It's kind of this nebulous idea that this young man is just kind of putting on the bravado and trying to, fake his way into it. He hasn't really doesn't have a life experience yet to really know the difference, and to know where the happiness comes from, to know, where to put the energy, where to put the focus. And I think that's an easy thing to lose sight of as artists, is like how much, how important the process is. We want people to appreciate our art so badly, and it can be so easy to be so hung up on that and so dependent on that. But I think the real, like, liberation for artists, and the real, like, meaning is enjoying the process. Like, when you finish and someone likes it, I think ideally that is, like, nice, but is secondary to the fulfillment of the process of getting there in the first place. When you can put in all this effort to do something, to create something, and then you get a response from someone whose opinion matters a lot to you, and it's like a tepid response, or just like a careless one, or even an outright, like, cruel one, that can just so easily, like, destroy an artist, and take all of the joy and satisfaction out of that entire process of making that thing. And so, I think this relationship between Sophistication and Gasoline is really kind of pointing at that, is pointing at the importance not of results, but of process, of the satisfaction, of self-satisfaction, of process and growth, and of appreciating each moment and building on each moment, to work towards something in the future, but to appreciate every step along the way, not for what that future will hold, but for what the present has. And when you do arrive, and the future becomes your present, then all the more to be able to sit in that and appreciate it. I think it's pretty good exercise to, like, drive your car in silence. And can you not go insane? Like, can you drive your car for an hour with no podcast, no stereo, no audiobook? Can you just drive in quiet for an hour and, like, be at peace about that? It's I think a lot of people would really struggle with
That's
that.
stressful just to think about.
Yeah. But it's so easy to fill every moment with as much as we possibly can, and to always feel like we need to be doing something else, something more. It could, taking a Sunday to just, I don't know if you can identify with this as a young man, but as a middle-aged person, like, taking a Sunday to, like, do nothing but just, like, play video games all day is, like, stressful. It's easy for that to just be, like, way too stressful to do. Like, you feel like you have to be doing something because there's always so much to be done, and you're always behind the 8 ball trying to, get this done, get that done. But ultimately, like, all of those things matter, and none of them matter. And all that really matters is, like, what's happening now. And if that's video games, then video games matter,
I can definitely relate to that with, like, I mean, of course, for me, it's different stuff, but, like, of course, like, being in college and being busy with all that and working and soccer and all the other things I do and all the creative stuff, like, being busy with all that stuff all the time. Like, I don't know, last year I wrote a poem called Banana Bread that kind of takes that similar idea about what you said about just, like, taking an entire Sunday to play video games, whatever. And in that poem, I kind of talk about how, like, that idea of, like, always having so much to do, but, like, could I just, like, have a whole day where the only thing I accomplished was baking a loaf of banana bread and be like satisfied with that and like feel accomplished and like it was a day well spent, and kind of exploring that kind of idea. But yeah,
we've been playing this video game called Tales of the Shire, where it's just like a cozy game about being a hobbit in the Shire. And everything is so low stakes, it's just like the night and day cycles are kind of short. So you can't do a lot during a day. And so your day will be like, half of it might be like doing some fishing and some foraging for like mushrooms and walnuts and herbs and stuff. And you've got to get some meals ready for friends that are going to come over for dinner, And it's just like, it's so kind of perspective shifting to think about like, like a chunk of the day in that Hobbit Shire life is just like getting to the mill to get flour. And to do that, you had to do some fishing, to sell some fish, to have the money to buy some flour. And that was like your whole work day. Like comparatively, that would be the whole work day for me at work would be the time, going to fish, selling it at the market, and buying some flour. And then to go home, make some meals, tend to the garden, and now it's bedtime. And it's a life of simplicity. It's a life that's very scaled back from what we've become so accustomed to, and yet it's the Hobbit culture, the Hobbit way of life is something that holds a lot of appeal for a lot of people, myself included. I very much consider myself a Hobbit in a lot of ways, because it's a simpler life where all of those little things matter, taking the time to fish in the pond, taking the time to talk to the people in the market, taking the time to walk to the mill to get your flour so that you can then walk back home and then spend the time cooking for friends and community. Like, it's a lot of time and labor spent doing basic things. That's when you look back in history, like that's what life has looked like for humans for most of human history. Like the pace of things today is so fast. It used to be like electricity isn't that old of a thing. That might be crazy to think about, but for most of human history, we didn't have that. So when it got dark outside, that really like changed your day, because it wasn't day anymore. Like, you weren't working outside. It was too dark, like things were simpler. And in the last couple of 100 years, we've really changed the pace of life a lot to where, and then with the advent of internet and phones and things, like it's just magnified that, to where we're just kind of constantly being inundated with content and constantly consuming things. And with cars, we're traveling distances on a daily basis that people wouldn't have imagined, a couple 100 years ago. So the scale of what we can do in a day is so different, and we can do it well into the night because we've got, all the electricity that we need to where when daytime is over, we don't have to stop. We can just keep going and going and going and going and going. And that's not really a human way to exist. That's a machine way to exist, if anything. And so, this idea that we need to kind of scale back and let each moment matter and be what it is key both to that process that young man has to go through in sophistication, and key to what that old man has to do in gasoline to make his life as it is make sense and not burn it all down. So yeah, I think that those three songs kind of open the album from this like large perspective of the community shrinking down to the individual, and then back to his like early adulthood, end of childhood, beginning of adulthood kind of thing. Is kind of where the album opens, and kind of I think paints the kind of the overall picture of like of what's wrong, what's the conflict here, and where are we going to address in the album. So I kind of like how it's kind of bookended in that way, of kind of zooming in this way, and then by the end starts to zoom back out through this journey.
Want to get into the next one?
Why don't we stop this here and then pick up with track 4 next time?
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of these songs? Or anything you want to kind of ask about in looking forward to next time, like for this next section? Be like, I think probably the next chunk would be like A Well Enough Alone and
Sail on a
Landslide, and I Knew the Words, and Say What. We can talk about those.
At least to me, kind of in general, the way I see that kind of next portion of the album is a bit more of a like inner conflict and self-reflection kind of part, kind of diving a bit deeper internally, and like those first ones are kind of a bit more bigger scope in the world and whatever, and then starting to kind of recognize that to find that place in the world and where you want to be and everything, you kind of need to look inwards first, and like kind of go through that process of like self-healing and figuring out exactly what you want and where you want to be before you can really get anywhere. And I feel like there's a lot of sort of personal growth that kind of happens throughout those like next 4 songs, from A Well Enough Alone to Say What. Like if you look at at least the way I interpret them, like the lyrics from that first one to the last one, like the perspective and tone has like completely flipped, and I feel like it kind of shows that personal growth. So I wonder if that's how you intended it and what you kind of see going into that next portion of the album.
Yeah. I mean, it. I think this next section really gets at the like pain and grief that this man goes through as he starts to go through adulthood. We're going to kind of get a view into some of the relationship dynamics and some of the conflict and pain along the way, and that's ultimately a source of growth, but it's, in the moment it's a lot of pain and heartache and destruction, but those tend to be the things that shape who we become, and so I think Say What is where that kind of comes to a fruition to kind of then take us into the last act of this. I guess you could think of it as like a 3-act story, where this middle act is kind of a lot of the relationship conflict and grief and the pain along the way, pain given, pain received, so it gets pretty grim here in the middle. Yeah. So looking forward to talk about it. So all right, well, I appreciate you coming and hanging out and chatting, man.